Hello everybody and welcome to a new video. I thought that in today's video I would do a video about why I prefer the psychoanalytic perspective, which is, Freud, and then why I also prefer social psychology, which I don't think that when I read it we mentioned like a person like that, the behavioristic perspective. They have Watson, and then there's Pavlov. That's behavioristic also. Yeah. Okay, so we have Pavlov, Watson. Then we have, I know we have Stanley Milgram. He was within social psychology. He did, but I'm not sure if we call him the father of it. I'm not really sure. But I think I really like the social psychology. It's in a way similar to the psychoanalytic, but it's not really, because they have their differences, and yeah, every perspective has their differences. And I know that some psychologists, they mix perspectives, and when I started reading more psychology, I was just so confused about that my psychology teacher was mixing all the perspective, and I was just like, why are you mixing? And he was just like, oh, but the lines are so thin. The deeper you get into psychology, the thinner the lines between the perspectives are. And I feel like that made it more difficult for me, because suddenly he was talking about something in psychology and that area, and he had things from like, oh, here was cognitive psychology, here was psychoanalytic, and there was some of the biological psychology, all of the mix. Oh, here's humanistic psychology as well, and it was just confusing for me a little bit. So it was a bit like that, but I've always felt from the start, the first perspective I learned was actually social psychology, so that might be a bit on it, but also because I'm very interested in history. And we did the last assignment we had when I read history was that we were going to write if we thought that it could happen that we have a dictatorship again here in Sweden. And I know that a lot of I said yes, and then I'm motivated because what you see throughout history and how humans act. And there is social psychology, which is also that we do what others do. So I feel like that also proves it. And we can kind of see it some would say we can see it in history today even, that some people are like, okay, we would never do that, and then you just turn to them doing that. So I just feel like it's we do what others do. We follow the group, we follow group pressure, and I feel like we can see it so obviously in our society. We can see it with social media, especially, I think, because we can see that especially with young girls, that they are watching these, and a lot of people don't think like, okay, I'm not affected by it, but then you are actually affected by it. You just might not realize it. But I feel like I personally thought that I wasn't affected, and then suddenly there I was skipping meals because I see all the time on my For You page that, oh, 1,000 calories, that's what you're supposed to eat, which is not. I just have to point out directly so no one starts doing this. You shouldn't be eating 1,000 calories a day if you're I don't even know if you maybe if you're a little kid, like maybe quite little, but as a teenager I don't think that you're even supposed to eat that little. Around 2,000 they say, so you shouldn't eat half of that. You should eat what you're supposed, you should eat healthy and all that, and 2,000 calories is good. So you see all these things on the internet, and you might see, okay, here's a movie, everyone is watching that movie, and there was this maybe jacket that they were wearing in the movie, and that's becoming a trend. And then what we do is that maybe that jacket, everyone starts wearing that, and you're just like, oh, but I didn't watch that movie. Then you feel compelled to watch that movie to see what it's about the jacket, and you're just like, okay, but I really dislike that jacket. You watch the movie and you see everyone walking around with the jacket, and you're just like, okay, maybe I should buy that jacket, maybe I'll keep it, that jacket looks nice. It really looks nice, but before you were convinced about how it looks horrible. And I feel like that's just a little example about how, you know, the group affects us. And I feel like I feel like psychology actually has helped me in every subject I've read, because being aware of how our society works, that of course helps you in other courses, because I read society, which is called in Swedish, but social science without words. So I read the social science, which was more psychology, and it was specified more in the behavior. However, I didn't really feel like that. I feel like it was a bit of some courses I read, I just really didn't understand why I read them, but that was what I read in school. In I don't know if you call it high school, because you know I read this. This is like, because you have to, in Sweden you have like, you know, the ordinary school, and then you pick one that is 3 years, and you quit it when you're 18 turning 19 if you go the years correctly, and then you start university in the fall during the year you turn 19. But I feel like how the group affects us is quite great, and I feel like the more I think about it, the more I realize how much of an effect it has on us. And I feel like many people don't really think about it. And you know, I also was like, okay, but I'm not affected by it. And I was just like, okay, some people are affected, and you might have a resistance to it. But I actually feel like most people, okay, you might have a little bit of resistance, but after a while, you know, the pressure gets more, and it's good. You just have more pressure on you, and eventually you will fall for the pressure. You will follow the group. And we can see, you know, I feel like it's so obvious if you just look at it, how we just fall for peer pressure and all of that. And then we can see throughout so many experiments how we pick what the group picks. We have ash lion experiment. I'm not really sure if that's exact names in English, but we call that in Swedish. But you know, is it Solomon Ash? I think it was Solomon Ash experiments. You know, if you search that for a family, we call it lion. But, you know, it was an experiment about a lion, and you know, there were actors, and they said, which line is this one equivalent to? And then it was like, here you have one line, and then you have 3 different lines, one too tall, one is correct, the same as the other one, and then we have one that is too short. The actors said the wrong one, and then, you know, the guinea pigs, I have heard it's called guinea pigs, but you know, the people they tested on, is they're going to see, like, do they answer the same as the group, which is the wrong answer, or do they actually answer the correct answer? So, you know, I feel like that's one, and then we can see the one with Stanley Milgram. But Stanley Milgram, he did an experiment about kind of giving electricity on people if they answer correctly. No, he said it was variable was in the experiment, you know, he said to people, okay, it is that we are testing how they learn things, you know, the in learning system, but he was actually testing kind of obedience, and how, because this was like after World War II, so he wanted to see, like, is it possible that we would follow a dictatorship again? So that's kind of a little bit more about what he tested, and that also showed that, you know, so I feel like the group just has a very high, you know, it affects us a lot. And then, you know, genes, I'm sorry, I always find it weird when I say this, I'm not sure if I pronounce it right, because I'm just starting thinking about genes as in patents, but what do you say, our family line, our parents, our ancestors, all that as well affects us. But we can see also through Watson's experiments and all that, that even, okay, that affects and that can change some things. But it also shows that the environment we're living in is what affects us the most, which means the group affects us the most once again. So I feel like this just proves my point on why I prefer social psychology. Then to the psychodynamic, to that it's more the point of how the childhood affects us and how we might not really realize it. And I disagree with some points in it. I do think that we can change. I don't think really in determinism that we can't really change after our childhood, that we are incapable of changing. I disagree with that. I think that we can change. And I think in social psychology they do believe that the person can change, so that's maybe more I'm holding on that. But I do agree on that the childhood affects us the most, and I think the more I think of it as well here, the more I realize it, that is the case. So if we think about our childhood, you know, we all probably has like something. Maybe if we, the thing is that most is like this can I bring up, and this will make more sense, is that like if we go through some sort of trauma during the childhood, that will, it's a high chance that in a way that will always stick by with us. However, we can change how much we let it affect us, how we get affected by it. Are we going to let this determine the rest of our lives? Are we going to live by and watch that we're doomed from the childhood? Or like, I think you can change that. I know that because like you know, as a kid I was a bit of an extrovert. Then, you know, a little bit bullying in school, and whoops, didn't talk to anyone for a little while, and then I became an introvert. I'm not really sure if I'm an introvert or if I'm more an ambivalent, I think it's called, you know, when you're in the middle. But you know, I'm starting to become more of an extrovert again, which I'm happy for, but I'm not really sure if that's, you know, I think the introverted side of me will always, in a way, stay, which is what I meant. You know, it will always stay and stand by me here, my introvert's side. But as well, I do feel like, you know, when I was more introverted, I didn't like to talk to strangers, you know, I didn't like to talk to anyone, you know, I just sat quiet because, you know, I felt like nobody wants to talk to me, so why should I talk to anyone? You know, that was kind of me. But now today I have zero problems with going up to talking to someone. I know that I have some friends that has difficulties with that, so they always force me to go. So that I feel like that's proof that I'm not really that introverted anymore, because I don't have a problem talking to a stranger, no matter who the stranger is. So, you know, because I was born an extrovert, my childhood, my, like, the society, the group pressure and peer pressure and all that, you know, made me into an introvert. That happened in childhood, that affected me, and I was practically an introvert from maybe 8 years old. So I was, I don't know, 16 maybe, I don't know, it's a bit hard, I think 16. So that was a little bit of time. And then, you know, my life was going better, so I guess it changed. But I always, you know, it's also because I'm aware of it that it's easier for me, because I'm aware of that, you know, that is something that I want to change, you know, that is like, but I feel like I am changing because I don't really have a problem. And also, like, with presentations, when I started, you know, the school thing, that's 3 years high school, whatever you call it, when I had a presentation, I started to call it stammering. And I was just like so scared, and that was the most horrible thing, for me. And then I challenged myself, and now I don't have a problem with presentations. I mean, I still have a little bit that I prefer to write. I'll always prefer to write over speaking in public, but I don't have a problem with speaking in public anymore. That's like, I'm not like, I get a little bit, I just get more nervous like if I sit by and watch others be extremely scared and frightened and have theirs, and then, you know, I'm coming there and I've seen everyone being scared and all that, and it just makes me a little bit scared, you know. So I prefer to be first, because I always like prefer to do things to get over with it, instead of like, I don't procrastinate. I'm like the opposite, I do it directly. I guess, I don't know, impatient, who knows. But I feel like the psychoanalytic also affects, just, you know, because of that. I know we have, you know, the whole theory that I mentioned about the id, the superego and the ego, and I'm not really sure about that front, how much I believe in that actually. I, you know, I do think about it every now and then, but I don't think that that is one of the greater parts personally. But I do think in the iceberg theory about the, you know, conscious and preconscious. So, you know, that's a little bit on what I think, and I think that, you know, you can go quite deep into it, but I feel like those, you know, I feel like childhood in that way affects a lot, but then also, as I mentioned, the group affects us a lot. I think those are the two greatest things that affects us. So that is at least what I think, and we all are different. I think different things, you know, and if you want, you can comment what you think is the major thing that affects us humans. Because I personally, as I mentioned, think that environment is a great part of it, and I feel like that's kind of quite obvious, because many of the psychology perspective is mentioning and bringing up that the environment matters. And yeah, but I feel like more, they don't really bring up the thing about peer pressure, and I think that peer pressure is the one thing that is like more to bring in to another level. So that's more like social psychology. So that's what I think. So yeah, thank you so much for watching this video, and goodbye.